Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell, having a great Monday, okay? And we have a great show. We have Community Matters, and the reason we call it that is because community does matter. I'm going to call this the military and the environment. Is that fair statement? Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have two special guests, Laurel Mei Singh. She's a doctoral candidate in geography. I can't read my hand. At CUNY, C-U-N-Y. That stands for the City University of New York City. And they have a City University of New York City song. It begins with "Give me a C for the C in City University of New York City," and then "Give me a U." It goes on. It takes about half an hour to sing the song. I've never heard it. Yeah, I'll sing it for you, but not on the air. Okay. Okay. She's a graduate student there. She's in the Graduate Center, which is at 34th Street and 5th Avenue. Yes. Great location. Yeah, near Macy's. Yes. Big block away. A block away. Okay, and then we have Lucy Gay, and she's with Leeward Community College in Waianae. She's with the Waianae Educational Opportunities. Okay, so, and we're going to talk about this thing, but what does geography have to do with the military and the environment? And what does the Waianae Educational Opportunities have to do with the military and the environment? Who wants to answer that first? You can both answer it.
Okay, I'll start. So geography, contrary to popular opinion, geographers, we're more than atlases. We don't just memorize states and capitals.
When did this happen?
Since we left elementary school. So I think that's a lot of people's experiences with geography, which is mine in elementary school. And what I'm most interested in is land use questions and relations to land and how that's nested in power relations. You know, how people interact with the environment and with land, and how people interact with each other because of their relationships with environment and land, and how these issues are connected to environmental justice, which I will talk about today.
So it gets from the old time where you get to know all the little cities and towns, and you could recite the capitals, and through a time of where geography means social justice.
Yes, that's a trend since the Vietnam War. Originally, geographers were military people who were going out and marking land so they could control land. And during the Vietnam War, social justice activists kind of took over the field and says, we're going to use this as a discipline to study these questions of imperialism, colonialism, and how these are all related to land use questions. So there's still the military geographers, so our American Association of Geographers conferences, there's the military geographers and then the social justice geographers, and we're kind of on parallel tracks, but not quite intersecting.
Wow. If you didn't know this, now you know this. By the way, we have a show, we have had a show on Tuesday afternoon run by people out of the geography department at UH, and we already know that geography goes much further than state capitals. Yeah. Okay, Lucy, your turn.
So my connection to Laurel is when it ties in when she came home to do some field work. She was looking for community informants, people who had some deep knowledge of the area, and I popped up as one of those persons. And so I've been doing some work in the community for a number of years and had a good feel for land issues, community issues, justice issues, because they all tie into education. You know, Waianae has been noted to be a place where educational opportunities sometimes are very limited, both by distance and by all sorts of barriers. And so that helped me to share with Laurel some of the topics. I have a broader field in Laurel, but I was able to hone in on those areas that could assist Laurel with her field work. And one was in helping you find other folks in the community to interview and to include as part of her, I guess, on the ground, boots on the ground type of people who could then validate perhaps what you were finding in the literature. and that's our connection.
I want to clarify that Lucy didn't pop up. People said you have to talk to Lucy Gay. Lucy Gay is the person to go to with community knowledge about Waianae. So I emailed, didn't hear back, and I decided to pop into your office, and the rest is history. Lucy is my mentor. She's given so much to so many people in the Waianae community, and is always kind of giving of energy and knowledge, a great, vast deal of knowledge. And I think that's what's actually really exciting about community organizing in Waianae, is that it's intergenerational. The elders really support the youth in kind of learning and developing our skills, and hopefully we contribute our energy and youthfulness as well.
All those things.
All those things. They keep us on our toes.
Okay, so you said land use, and was it social?
Yeah, social issues out there.
Social issues.
Yeah. So specifically, here's an example where I can speak to. We had, maybe about 6, 7, 8 years ago, a team of developers move into the community. They purchased 200 acres of some unused lands, and had an intention of turning that agricultural district land into a light industrial park. And it sat right at the front gate of the Lualualei Naval Ammunition Depot. Farmers are abut that property, but what's unique about the land use issue there is that the agricultural activities that abut the property, it's zone Ag 1. And that's the only place you can actually conduct a business in piggery business, because it smells. And so if this project was, if the land use was reorganized and redistricted, the pig farmers would have to move out again. You know, we've seen that happen with other parts of the island. And so where do we move them? Where do we move the pig farmers? You know, so that was going to be another issue. And Waianae is a place for agriculture. It always has been. And so we needed to help the community first become aware that this issue was before the city and the State Land Use Commission.
What issue exactly?
The issue is to rezone agricultural lands to urban,
for development.
Industrial, in an agricultural area.
Okay, so you opposed it.
Yeah. So we needed to bring that information to the community,
What
and
happened?
then to help the community. We want, basically.
They didn't do it.
Yeah.
Lucy's a very strategic organizer. She kind of knows the pressure points and the people to contact, and also is really good at mobilizing people. She's a teacher. So a lot of her students get really involved in these campaigns.
So
Okay.
we
Would you call yourself an activist?
I'd call myself an educator.
How about an active educator? Or
Well, I hope so. I hope educators are active. They're not dead.
Okay, just trying to find out where we are here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about the military now?
Well, they sit right on, like as I was saying, that property was right on the border of the military property.
Yeah.
And so when Laurel came into town, she needed to know the stories behind that. And in our campaign to keep the lands agriculture, we learned a lot about what was going on in the military lands back there. So it was that information was very helpful to Laurel.
What was going on in the land?
Well, you know, the Lualualei Valley is, I would say, the largest valley on the island of Oahu. And not only, you know, most valleys are sloped this way. So you can pretty much just use the bottom of the valley. But Lualualei is sloped it's like this. It goes like this, and then it goes up. So there's a lot of...
Like a bowl instead of a
lots
narrow...
of developable land. Lots of,
I thought there was
acres.
radio equipment in there.
Yes, there is. Yes, there's radio equipment.
Towers.
Towers. They're actually, for just tidbit, it's the tallest. Those two towers are the tallest structures, built-up structures in think in the state.
In all of Hawaii.
Yeah, well,
They're
they were built in Vietnam, as I remember,
Yes.
and they were pointed west so that they could communicate with military positions pointed west.
Right. So that valley currently is in the hands of the military. They use it at one time for munitions stockpile and then for communication. But there are some things happening that's going on, and they're probably on the next horizon. We'll see some changes in the way that land will be used. The military has told the community that they're moving munitions closer to Pearl Harbor. And so if you go out there and you look at the sign, it'll say Pearl Harbor. Instead of saying Lu'alu'alei ammunition, it'll say West Lock Annex.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's a shift in moving the munitions out.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it makes sense from a business point of view. I mean, it reduces the distance of time. It takes it, instead of transiting some pretty dangerous materials through populated communities.
In the rush hour.
At the lunch hour, on a road that is already fully congested. You saw what happened just a couple days ago. Yeah. So I think it's a wise move. I think it's a smart thing to do. Yeah.
And the important thing about Lu'alu'alei Valley is it's incredibly fertile soil.
Yes.
It's the location for Ma'o Farms, one of the most productive organic farms in Hawaii. I think
Is Ma'o Farms in there?
It's
Yes,
in
it's in that
Lu'alu'alei
same valley.
I don't understand. I thought this was a military reservation.
The
How could
valley
Ma'o-
is this big.
Yeah, so the military doesn't own the whole valley?
No, they don't.
9,000 acres are military base, and a fraction of the rest of it, which is a fraction of 9,000 acres, are farmland and residential community, but the vast majority are bases. And I was just staying at Kahumana Farms. They have a bed and breakfast area, and it's a very productive farm with mangoes, greens, all sorts of fruits and vegetables, and it's literally across the street from the 9,000 acre military base. That's pretty darn empty from the outside perspective. It seems, from what people say about the land, we're going to go visit it next week, it's pretty underutilized for the amount of land that's there.
So what you want to get it for farming?
I think that's what
I
people
think
from the community.
That's the vision for the future, that it has a category of soils that are considered very, very good for farming. It's what they call a vertisol soil. So what vertisol soils do is they crack when it's dry, and when it gets wet, it goes back together, and so when it gets kind of mucky, and then when it dries again, it turns. So it does its own tilling. That's one of the good things about it. And also because it cracks, it's not a good soil to put buildings and things on it because it'll crack. So it's called the Lu'alu'alei vertisol soil, high in quality.
The government, federal government, has owned Lu'alu'alei for a long time.
Since 1931.
Yes.
1931, as many of the bases in federal reservations. Are you saying that the government is not using it?
Underutilized.
What does that mean?
Well, if you were to drive out there, you'll see the radio tower. So you have two towers sticking up and this big, vast open area.
So,
Then when you go back to where the bunkers are, there are a few of those bunkers, but the back of the valley, it's all vacant.
so would you remove the bunkers and remove the towers?
The bunkers would probably have to be in some way clean before they
Of course,
can put
but
people
would
in
you?
there.
And so you would take part of the land for farming?
Yeah.
And the military, what's their feeling about this?
Well, there's something that happened in Congress, I would say about the early to mid 90s. Typically when military land is, when they're no longer
Lucy,
needed.
can I hold up on this? When you start talking about Congress, I need to take a break.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just say, there's something that occurred in the early 90s where an amendment was inserted into the Defense Appropriation Bill that allows excess Navy lands to pass to private hands instead of returning it to the state or the county where that land was taken.
Mm-hmm.
That was the
Is that
protocol.
the law now?
For the Navy, for Hawaii. That's
the
it. Not
law.
for the whole Navy.
Interesting,
Just
interesting.
for us.
Okay, Laurel Mei Singh, doctoral candidate in geography at CUNY in the Graduate Center there on 34th Street, as opposed to the one on 32nd Street. Only kidding. Okay, and Lucy Gay, Leawood Community College in Waianae Educational Opportunities. We're talking about the military and the environment in Hawaii here in Community Matters. We'll take a short break. We're going to come right back. I'm promising you. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here, and don't forget, our Twitter handle is ThinkTechHI, which means you can make comments and questions, and we will respond, and thank you, no matter what you say. Okay, so fact is that there's a provision in the law as pertains to Waianae, where you can take part of it back, or I don't know how you do this, but you can get part of it back for private ownership. And it doesn't have to go back from whence it came. In this case, it would be, in the case of Lualu'alei, it'd be the state of Hawaii as the original grantor. Mm-hmm. And I guess I hear you saying in the lines here that you'd like to use that law, yeah, and get part of it back for some of the farmers like Mau, Mau Farms, and what was the other one you mentioned?
Kahumana Organic
But
Farm.
in there is the bigger picture, because now with that wonderful soil and the big valley, potentially capable of being moved over into the private side, how will we then use that land? And in the past, Waianae was used, in fact, what's that wonderful quote William makes?
Okay, so yeah, maybe we can talk about environmental justice
because
issues.
Environmental justice is tied in with this land.
So
what is environmental justice?
So environmental justice.
And do we have it in Kaka'ako?
I wouldn't say we do. But the definition of environmental racism is this idea that harmful environmental practices are tied to the imbalance of social power. So what we see in Waianae...
Is social power the same thing as racism?
It's tied to it. So we could say environmental racism, so communities of color, the origins of the environmental justice movement were Black communities in the South, had incredibly high rates of cancer near areas of industrial pollution. And there was a study conducted that said that race is the most powerful indicator for the placement of environmental hazards, more than class, more than any other aspects of power. But I don't think we can separate race and class, especially in Waianae. I think we see them working together. And in Waianae, we have a community that's 60% Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. The poverty rates are about 20%. In some census tracts, the poverty rates are as high as 50%. I would say it's possible even higher. And then we see 34% of the land are military bases. So we have a map that we were showing earlier. Maybe we can show it again.
Why is this unfair?
Well, it's not just bases. There's a power plant,
the landfills.
Why is that unfair?
Well,
I mean, these organizations and facilities were established a long time ago.
So the red on
And the numbers were completely different at the time Lualua was granted to the federal government.
I wouldn't
It was
say,
completely different when the power plant was built.
I wouldn't
No.
say so.
Why was that unfair in 1931?
Well, well, it was always.
I guess what you're saying is it got to be unfair.
Yes.
Something happened to
Yes.
make it unfair.
Right.
What happened to make it unfair?
Well, as for landfills, there is I guess you'd call it a guideline. It's called the Underground Injection Control Line. That it's a line that was drawn around the island. It was a study done by hydrologists, and that line determines where you can put hazardous kinds of activities and where you cannot, because that line defines where our water sources are. So what's quite unique about the line, and this was done in 1959, at the time of statehood, when you go around the island, you'll notice that the injection line pretty much kisses the shoreline until you come around kind of point.
What is the injection line?
It's that control line that determines where the water sources are for our island, the aquifers, where we get our drinking water. So you cannot. Cannot put
the
things.
The aquifers are up further, aren't they?
No, it's.
They're not at the beach. They're not at the at the shoreline.
We need a lesson in geography.
Yeah.
So
They stretch.
They
all the way
stretch.
from the mountains, pretty
Okay.
pretty
and
close
this
to
is
the shore.
underground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what this line says is there are certain things you cannot insert into, or you have to protect it, that area from being contaminated
The
from
aquifer, the lens in the aquifer.
Yes. So when you come into the Waianae area, those lines go deep into the valley instead of along the coastline. So that means it sets Waianae up to becoming a place where you can site a number of polluting type
Into
facilities.
the aquifer.
Yeah.
The aquifer is being damaged by what? What is damaging the aquifer?
Well, they're not if they're in Waianae because they're outside of the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in
Waianae
Waianae, the aquifer is further back.
Further back.
And I think we see, there's always been kind of a diaspora of Hawaiians moving to Waianae. This has been happening since 1848, since the land divisions enforced by Kamehameha III. So we've always seen a lot of, Native Hawaiians moving out there. And there always has been water sources. I think this is one thing that Lucy's saying. And then with the history of plantations, they diverted the water sources away from the Lo'i, where they grew taro, from the food sources, and redirected it towards sugar plantations. And this
you mean on the plain here?
Actually in
Waianae.
Waianae.
In Waianae as well.
One of the
sugar plantations in
the first one on
Waianae.
the island was
Waianae Valley.
established in Waianae Valley.
Wiedemann.
Yeah.
So this actually has been a way that Native Hawaiians have been dispossessed of land and livelihood, starting in the late 1800s, right? So there's kind of an ongoing historical pattern where after the Hawaiians were dispossessed of land and it was used for sugar plantations, then eventually in the 1930s, the U.S. military started seizing that land. So we go from kind of...
Seizing is a highly charged word. Are you suggesting they physically took the land by force from somebody?
Yeah, they basically told people you have to leave because we're using this for, U.S.
Wasn't there a legal
defense.
transaction here, or did they just go with bayonets?
I don't know that part, but what I do know is during the war period, I had a student she's in her 70s, and they were not allowed to stay overnight on their land. They had to leave their farmland, go into Waianae town, and find a place to sleep. And that was at Bayonet Point. Yeah, you can't stay on the land.
But did the military have the right to the
Oh,
land?
no, I don't think so. I don't know of any I don't know if we had martial law, I have no idea.
Yes, a lot of it happened during martial law. We can talk about Makua Valley, where there's a long history of activism.
I've been there, yeah.
Just a couple weeks after the Pearl Harbor bombing, the U.S. military says, okay, it's wartime, you guys gotta leave, it's martial law. Several people that are still alive in Waianae today.
Did they keep it? Is that what happened?
Yes, they said.
Well, they said they were gonna return the people to the land 6 months after the war officially ends, and they're still not on the land.
They have
that's 70 years ago.
Yeah.
They have a lease for $1 total for 60 years.
60 years.
From the state.
Yes.
Yep, and it's the lease ends in 2029.
Yeah.
But they do have a lease, though.
Yes.
They have the
For
legal
$1.
right to be there.
Yeah, but
There's
they
a lot
also
of
had an
$1 a year
obligation to
leases
return the
around
people.
world, so.
But they also, the military and the state, or territory at the time, had a legal obligation to return the people to the land 6 months after the war ended, which never happened.
So I think
How did that legal obligation arise?
That was the reason given to the people who were on the land. That was the promise. You leave your land, you will go back at the end of the war. We'll give it back to you.
But you know, I mean, it's land.
Well, we trust American, you know.
No, but it's
You're
land.
as good as your word, your handshake.
It probably was a handshake, but,
Yeah. Well, it's a
but
good thing.
it wasn't a
isn't it?
deed. It wasn't anything in writing recorded against the land or anything, was it?
Well, you know, I don't know if there were these recorded things, but you know, when you're a citizen and you're looking to your government, and when they tell you this is what we will do, what are you to do? You're going to have full faith, right? So they've been waiting, and this is now. Remember, we're back in the 30s, not in the 70s. We're not in the 90s. So it's a different kind of way the citizens related to the authorities.
So all this time, by that analysis, the federal government has been delaying or welching on its promise.
Mm-hmm.
So what has happened to make them perform the promise? Anything?
Yeah.
Is there a lawsuit? Or?
Yeah.
Malama.
Makua, they pressed a lawsuit in the 90s against the U.S. military, and they eventually settled after 9/11. Just about a month after 9/11, they reached a settlement agreement with the U.S. military, where the U.S. military agreed to stop live fire training because there's over 40 endangered species in the valley.
I remember that.
So they're no longer able to train, and they've tried to, be able to train. They've completed the environmental impact statements statements that they were supposed to complete, but the federal judge said that their environmental impact statement was not satisfactory. They didn't do enough of the legwork to show the extent of the environmental damage for live fire training on endangered species.
Then what happened?
So now the U.S. military can no longer train in this valley. They devote good amount of resources to environmental conservation programs as connected to the settlement agreement, and basically the land is pretty much another case of underutilized land.
But the case was settled, though.
It was settled.
It was brought on the basis of the promise, I guess? That's what I heard you saying. Now then it was settled, and so are we saying that the settlement was no good?
I don't know if it was brought on the basis of the early promise in the 30s. I think what motivated the community leaders to press the military was the damage they saw going on in the valley.
Okay, that damage has been stopped.
Yes.
But a settlement was reached.
Yes.
Somebody brought a law, the Malama organization brought a lawsuit, and it achieved the settlement in a federal case, I guess. It achieved the settlement. So where are we then? If the settlement would presumably...
We're waiting for 2029 to come around.
Right.
Or sooner.
I would take that as a good analysis.
Yeah.
2029, was it $1 a year?
No, $1 total.
$1 total.
From
So
1964.
Had a better deal
2
than
cents a
TNT.
year or something. Gee, I'll take that deal. But 2029, the military has no further right under that state lease.
I mean, they
Well,
may try to renew it. And
They
I
could
think-
renew a lease.
And I think this is where community activism is important.
Well, it's a
Malama
political
Makua-
question, isn't it? If the state was not willing to renew the lease, if the lease wouldn't get renewed.
Yeah.
Although I suppose the federal government could
Yeah,
condemn it with federal condemnation.
Well, and then with other things happening, you know, with, what is it called, sequestration, and the downsizing that's occurring across the branches, you know, it may not become one where they get a renewal, because they may not need it, they may not want it, they may not be able to use it.
Has anybody made an analysis of whether the military actually needs this land? I mean, for national defense?
I'm doing an analysis of it. I mean, I don't...
After this break,
Okay.
I want to hear about that.
Okay.
Because that is really the dispositive point here. They are the federal government.
Yes.
They're on top
Yes.
of the food chain. Okay. Laurel Mei Singh, doctoral candidate in geography at CUNY, a graduate student in the graduate center there, and Lucy Gay, Leewood Community College in Waianae, the Waianae Educational Opportunities, talking about the military, you know, and the environment. We could use about 10 hours for this discussion, I think. And we're going to talk about your article, too. Click that in, okay? We're going to come right back after this break, you'll see, and we're going to continue on our 6-hour discovery experience here at ThinkTech.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham, and I'd like to invite you to come and watch my show every Wednesday at 3. I'm interested in a variety of issues that have to do with politics and our local business economy. And I'd like to bring on guests who like to talk about everything from technology to social media to what we can be doing to improve our environment. And so I'd like to invite you every Wednesday at 3 to stay and watch my show here with ThinkTech Hawaii. And I'll see you there.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
I love the flag part. Okay, here we are with Laurel Mei Singh and Lucy Gay talking about the military and the environment. It's complex.
Yeah.
It involves the community, business in the community. Yeah. It involves the history of the state. Yeah. It involves the state and its, you know, political prerogatives or lack of same. It involves the Hawaiian community for sure. It involves the federal government. I mean, all these multiple relationships, and it's hard to get a handle on where, you know, the larger considerations are. Because you start with the fact that we are in the country, and the country must have defense. And I know there are some people that don't think the country needs defense, but in this world of Vladimir Putin's and the like, and Xi Jinping's, we need defense. So what role does Hawaii play, and what role does the military play for Hawaii? So you wrote an article. What's the article?
Well, first of all, before I talk about the article, what I'm really interested in is redefining the meaning of security. The U.S. military promotes this idea of national security, national defense, kind of playing on our fears of these external threats that are gonna, jeopardize the security of the U.S. citizen. But what I'm really interested in is food security, educational security, economic security. Everyone should have a guaranteed job. So what I'm interested in is kind of rethinking where the resources should be going, whether it should be going all, 90% of it, the largest defense budget in the world, more than most of the countries in the world combined.
Substantially less than it used to be.
Right, but it's still...
And China's is substantially more than it used to be.
But if you look at China and the U.S., it's still pretty uneven. There's still a lot more resources going to the U.S. military, so kind of funneling and redirecting those resources back into social safety nets, social programs. That's something...
So you don't want to spend money for the military at all?
I mean, I think there are so many other ways that we can kind of promote security amongst the public.
Well, aren't you worried about any external threats in the world? I mean, are we free of external threats now? Is mankind, humankind, have we gone to a place of civilization where we're not worried about it?
I would say the biggest buffer against social threats or these threats is as education. If we have a well-educated public who has decent health care and housing, then we can have so much more power to kind of take care of each other, protect
there or
ourselves.
here?
Here in Hawaii.
What about there, the people who would make aggressive moves against us because we have more than them?
I mean, I'm not a foreign policy expert, but I do know that kind of the U.S. is very expert at kind of manipulating people's fears to kind of exaggerate threats to justify
But you agree
a war
with me that
economy.
somebody has to determine how to defend the country. Somebody has to do that. Right or wrong, somebody has to do that. Whether it's the president or the Congress or the Pentagon.
I mean, I'm interested in rethinking, what does defense mean? Is defense about violence, or is defense about kind of security to live? And that's what I'm most interested in, is having security to live. And I know that in my generation, it's incredibly difficult to find a job, incredibly difficult to pay rent. So I'm interested in figuring out, and it's not just my generation, there's a lot of older people that are struggling too. So I'm really interested in really rethinking, how can we protect ourselves?
Okay. So the element that I was asking about before is, has anybody made an analysis of whether the military really needs this land? And I'm not just talking about Lululele, and I'm not talking about Makua. I'm talking about every federal reservation in the state. We live in dynamic times, and the situation that existed in 1830 or 40 when the military first came here, the situation that existed in 1874 when Pearl Harbor got started, and the intertwining of the U.S. military in Hawaii for all that period, has changed. Everything has changed. The population of Hawaii has changed. The demographics have changed. The economy has changed, and the military has changed. And so the question is keeping up with all those changes, because maybe sometimes the military doesn't need something, and we have to point that out to them. Sometimes they are absolutely needed. Somebody has to make a decision about whether they need it or don't need it. So have you made an analysis of, say, Lululele and whether they need it?
I mean, the opinion that I hear from people from the community is that and Lucy would echo it, is the munition storage could be redirected to Pearl Harbor.
It sounds like that's happening.
Yeah, so I think all of that land at Lululele and Makua are better off in community hands. I think
all of it.
What
about the radio towers?
With technology, I don't know that something is, there must be other more advanced ways to maintain communication across long distances. And I don't know that the towers may represent an old technology.
It's a fair chance. They've been there a long time.
And one other thing I wanted to add is, I think the military bases make Hawaii a target more than anything else. We see this with Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was the target. If there were a Pearl Harbor base there, Pearl Harbor wouldn't have been bombed.
And I mean, it's sort of like the World Trade Center. You attack it over and over again because it has become iconic, and there's a real truth in that. On the other hand, if you remove the military, there's a concern about it. If the military were not here, wouldn't you guys be concerned that here we are in the middle of the ocean, we are vulnerable to people like Kim Jong-un over there, who likes to change time zones and threaten us with missiles? Aren't you concerned that the military, for us especially, is a necessary element of our security? No? Would you take it away? Would you send them away?
Well, again, I go back to the inventiveness of man, and that we've come up with technology that perhaps today we can deploy a shipload of soldiers much faster from the West Coast than we could trying to load soldiers onto ships here, along with their equipment, and then get out there. I think the guys from the West Coast will beat the guys, leaving Pearl Harbor. So I think what we're caught in here is that we're talking about things as if technology remained constant, but it hasn't.
No, I agree. It changes.
So whether Hawaii continues to be a strategic defense post, I think maybe technology has bypassed us.
Okay,
just as planes bypass us.
This leaves the same questions. Yeah. Who decides? Does the group that represents the farmers outside of Lululele decide?
Well, I think, well, this is
maybe
what
it's
I
a
think.
graduate student at CUNY.
I like to use an accounting principle, you know?
Okay.
The ones who take the greatest risk should have the greatest benefits. So maybe they're the ones who should have a major voice, because they're taking the risk.
And this is why Lucy's work is so important in the Waianae community. Is she has several groups, the Waianae Environmental Justice Working Group, Concerned Elders of Waianae, and they've been very active in speaking out about land use issues and how we want this land for agriculture, for affordable homes. We have a Waianae film series every other month where we talk about these relevant contemporary political issues. We bring people together, we encourage dialogue. So I think the work that Lucy does is all about mobilizing people in the community.
Have you gotten traction with city government, state government, and our delegation in Washington, D.C.?
Well, with the issues we've dealt with, we've had to deal with Land Use Commission and City Council. So on those levels, Health Department, we've had some traction. We've had some wins. I've seen some small moves in a direction I think that is positive, meaning they're not sitting at 0.0.
Yeah.
Maybe a degree over or so.
Okay, we're about out of time, but I want to give each one of you guys an opportunity to leave a message with our audience, okay? And your camera is over there, that one, that's the camera. So tell them what you want them to think about and do.
Okay, so I think one of the things the worldwide audience can do is to look into your own community. Find those organizations. They're usually nonprofit, they're usually young people, they're usually young lawyers who need, more than anything else, a few bucks, because they do a lot of things off their back. They do it, but that's the group, I think, if you have a group like that in your community, donate money, because we get, what the community doesn't have is a voice that is well trained, and law schools do a great job at that. They train people how to argue, how to recognize false claims, how to rebut. And community, in the most part, especially in these poor communities, minority communities, that's a skill set that we don't have. So we need that partnership, and we need to nurture those types of organizations in your neighborhood. Support them, keep them alive so they can keep getting a meal. They need a meal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Laurel,
but that's what I'd say.
Laurel, why don't you talk, and why don't you include, if you would, our federal delegation, who has a lot of control, or of all the layers of government, they have most control over this issue.
So to the federal delegation from Hawaii in particular, I say listen to the voice of the people. Listen to the grassroots, listen to people in Waianae, the people who are most affected by military presence on the island, on like the most personal level in terms of the land and living space that we live on. You know, we have a lot to say, and we're affected by the U.S. military, so listen to our voices.
Okay, sounds like this discussion is only beginning. Thank you, ladies. Laurel Mei Singh, doctoral candidate at CUNY, and Lucy Gay of the Waianae Education Opportunities. Lots of miles to go before we sleep on this one, eh?
Yeah.
Yes, our work is cut out for us.
The military and the environment, an issue you will hear about again. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.